the honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and it is, as always, an honour to stand on behalf of the people of Battle River Crowfoot and enter into debate on the important subjects that come before this place. And for those who are watching that are wondering what a debate on privilege is, let me unpack that just for a quick moment. The idea of privilege, and it's a word that is often used in society and whatnot, but it has a unique meaning in this place. It ensures that ultimately Canadians have the full and supreme power to control the affairs of the nation, including the government. And the reason why it is called privilege is because each member of Parliament, when they are given a mandate by the people, are endowed with that authority to be able to make decisions. And it is this body, 338 members of Parliament, 338 individuals that represent every square inch of this incredible country we have from coast to coast. Madam Speaker, it is this body, the only true representative entity in the nation that has the ultimate authority to determine the future of our nation. And the reason why a privilege debate is so very important is because it speaks to the very heart of ensuring that the rights of members of Parliament being able to represent their constituents, represent Canadians, are not infringed upon. And it comes back to the fundamental tenet of parliamentary supremacy, something that is unique to the Westminster system and something that I would suggest sets us apart in terms of the power that we have. In fact, when you look around this place, Madam Speaker, and you see the history that lends towards this being the supreme lawmaking agency of the land. And it's things like the mace, that although there's a ceremonial purpose that is walked into in a parade, and a lot of people may look at that and say, well, you know, what's the big deal about that? Well, it's the transference of authority of the Crown to the democratically elected government of the people. The fact that we are given the opportunity to speak on motions, the fact that members cannot be silenced, the fact that there's votes when a member, when there's a conflict as to who can be heard, the fact that confidence motions exist, all of these things speak to the privileges that members of Parliament have in this place. So for those who are watching and wondering, what's the big deal about a privilege motion? It speaks to the very heart of what our democracy is, and that is ultimately that people, that Canadians are the ones that get to choose a path forward. And that is why, Madam Speaker, when it comes to the issue at hand, and I'll dig into some of the details as to the astounding revelations that have come out of some of the committee work, whether it be the relationship that this place can and I would suggest should have with committees, or whether it be a host of the other concerns that we have related to this motion of privilege here before us. It ultimately comes down to a defense of democracy and our democratic institutions, because, Madam Speaker, if we do not have that, we risk losing our democracy. And my fear, Madam Speaker, is that over the last number of years, we have seen a continual erosion of that, whether it be through the course when during the first weeks of COVID. And I think that most Canadians would give a tremendous amount of latitude for those first few weeks of COVID. Nobody knew around the world what was going on, and certainly that can be litigated. But, Madam Speaker, when the government brought forward a omnibus spending and taxation bill, the very fundamental tenet of this idea of privilege, of Parliament being the ultimate decision maker for the land, Madam Speaker, is that taxation and spending is the prerogative of this place. Yet it was that Prime Minister, exceptional circumstances or not even during wartime, when the world was at war 2 times over, did they bring forward motions that would have given unlimited taxation and spending authority. Yet it was that roughshod attitude that this government seems to care little about our history and our institutions, but rather they are far more interested in pursuing their political agenda in the pursuit of power. When, Madam Speaker, it is not the pursuit of power that a government should be interested in. It is a pursuit to serve Canadians, and we have seen that balance that should exist in this place turned absolutely on its head. And the result is, and we've heard about it, my colleagues from the Conservative Party that spoke today and had spoke prior to the last constituency break have emphasized how there has been this democratic decline. Now, the Liberals are quick to say, oh, well, it's factors outside of their control. The NDP are quick to say, oh, it's factors outside of their control. But ultimately, it needs to come down to an empowering of the citizenry of our country. And that is safeguarded through what we call privileges in this House. And if we lose those things, if we see those things eroded, then, Madam Speaker, we face a grave challenge being able to do the solemn duty that has been entrusted to all of us as members of Parliament. And at a time, Madam Speaker, when there has been a substantial erosion of regular Canadians being able to trust that their government has their best interests in mind. Because we see increasingly, I hear it all the time, whether I'm traveling across my constituency, whether it's as I visit communities in other parts of the country, or whether it's in airports or different places that I have a chance to chat with those amazing regular Canadians. Not the academic class, not those who have a whole host of letters behind their name, but regular Canadians. They wonder what the deal is. They wonder if they can trust. It used to be, Madam Speaker, and I'll get to the substance of the motion here in just a moment. It used to be that you may not like the Prime Minister, but you respected the office. Increasingly today, there are many Canadians that simply have lost respect for the office of the Prime Minister and so many of our democratic institutions, whether that be our justice system. And Madam Speaker, I could give you numerous examples of how the justice system is failing Canadians. And when the justice system fails Canadians, of which the laws are passed by this place as the ultimate arbiter of the land, that principle of parliamentary supremacy which is safeguarded by parliamentary privilege, it is incumbent upon us to take action. Yet we see increasingly that Liberal government is unwilling to do so. So, Madam Speaker, when we talk about privilege, it's not something that is this flippant term that can simply be glossed over and say, oh, well, it's not a big deal, or it's committee's responsibility. No, Madam Speaker, it comes to the very fundamental ideas of what our democratic institutions are, what they should be, and how we can ultimately, and what I hope sooner than later will be a Conservative government led by the member from Carleton, the hard work of being able to restore the trust that has been broken in our institutions in this nation, Madam Speaker. Because we can do that. We can do that. It's going to take tough work, and I would just quote the member from Carleton, the leader of the Conservative Party. He says this often, but he says it's time that government focus on doing a few things well as opposed to doing everything poorly. Because that is the place that we are at. Nothing seems to be going well in this country. And the solution that the Liberals seem to be so quick to propose is that they'll simply spend more money. We saw that during COVID. We've seen that with a host of other issues, a laundry list of things. They seem to be quick to spend more money and say that that is the answer. Yet it's Canadians that are then suffering. It's Canadians that are seeing the impacts of that. They want to deal with an issue that they find is very important, the environment and climate change. So what do? Instead of actually proposing solutions, they simply punish Canadians. And it's that flippant attitude that is causing that erosion of trust in our democratic institutions. And then when it comes to the debate around the privilege, we had an individual. One of two individuals, actually, and it's hard to believe that this is, it almost sounds comical. It's something that you would read in a synopsis of a Saturday night, a political drama. But two individuals in a firm, they got a $20 million contract. We think a $20 million contract. It could have been more. There isn't good documentation to prove exactly what that number was. They are called to testify before a parliamentary committee, and their testimony is lacking the facts, to put it lightly. And Madam Speaker, what we saw in this motion is a clear disregard for the fundamental tenets. And having watched those committees as a member of the Ethics Committee and as somebody who cares deeply about the institutions and infrastructure of our government, we see how the flippant nature to which the Liberals and propped up by their partners in the NDP, they approach these things with little care about the impact that it has on the trust of our institutions. And as we saw during the fact that we had a app that was supposed to cost several $100,000, end up costing more than $60 million, and we don't even know what the full cost of that is, Madam Speaker. Again, this is the sort of stuff you would think you would read in a Hollywood political soap opera drama. But it is being lived out in reality in the House of Commons in our country. And what is the Liberals' response to this? Like, oh, well, yeah, maybe something went wrong, but it wasn't us. That's what they say. And then when it comes to questions surrounding committee, Madam Speaker, they say, oh, well, it's because committees have become dysfunctional. It has nothing to do with scandal. It has nothing to do with mismanagement. It has nothing to do with the fact that it's MPs' jobs to actually get answers. It has nothing to do with the fact that it is committees have a core and fundamental purpose that is guaranteed through the processes that have been laid out in the Parliament of Canada Act and standing orders, Madam Speaker, to study specific things. They don't take any of that seriously. They simply say, oh, well, you know, it's simply partisanship. But I've noticed something, Madam Speaker, and this is an observation that I offer to all Canadians that are watching this important debate. As soon as the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister are really good at this, among other members of the Liberal cabinet, among members of the NDP leadership, although it seems like there's a dramatic decline in the number of NDP members in this House currently, so I wonder what that'll look like after the next election. But when it comes to the fundamental tenet of working for the best interests of Canadians, the only time you hear the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, other members of the NDP Liberal coalition talk about Team Canada, it is when it has been coupled with failure. And it is, it's tragic, quite frankly, because take housing, a little bit separate from the issue at hand, but closely related, because what we see is that the Liberals all of a sudden take housing seriously. They forget that they've been in power for close to a decade, and that housing costs have doubled under their leadership, and that the inflationary crisis that has led to diminishment of the purchasing power of Canadians is a result of their mismanagement of the economy. Yet now they're saying, well, you know what, it requires a Team Canada approach. And Madam Speaker, in terms of the vernacular, I don't disagree. But the challenge is that it's only when the Liberals have failed, and it's when Canadians are feeling the consequences of that failure, that they say that a Team Canada approach is needed. And what is the consequence of that? They have weaponized that very phrase and what it should mean for Canadians to accomplish their political objective, which is to retain power at all costs. And Madam Speaker, it is absolutely shameful. And the erosion of trust in our democratic institutions is something that is hurting our country. It is hurting the building in which we stand and everything that it represents. And it's hurting every aspect of what government should stand for. So it's time that this country has a government that is willing to roll up its sleeves and do the hard work of governing. Not to prioritize photo ops, but prioritize the administration and management of government. And we see practical solutions being proposed often by the member from Carleton and this incredible team of Conservatives that we have in the House right now. And I speak often to candidates that are looking forward to running in the next election. There was an opportunity to run in a carbon tax election, confidence vote, that all other parties showed exactly where they stand, that they're in favor of bankrupting Canadians and an extremist ideological agenda as opposed to letting Canadians actually make a choice. But we see an incredible team that's bringing pragmatic, practical solutions forward, that's willing to roll up our sleeves and get that work done. Because, Madam Speaker, what we have seen under these Liberals is the antithesis of that. And it's hurting the very institutions that we need to work so hard to steward and defend. So when my colleague from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes moved this privilege motion after the Speaker's finding, it's now a couple of weeks ago because of the Easter break, we have a clear opportunity here. And I would note, I support that. I have some concerns about the amendment that was moved from the member from Kingston, because there certainly seems to be instead of actually getting to the root of the issue, they would rather, and in an unsurprising manner, they would simply rather study it some more, it seems. They would simply want to reduce the urgency to which Conservatives certainly take this fundamental issue that where our democracy is at stake. And as the member from Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Rideau Lakes, after moving this motion, he said that it's using an extraordinary remedy for an extraordinary problem, calling somebody to the bar, demanding that accountability, to basically a signal or flag to the nation that we take seriously the job we have to do here, and that you do not play a roughshod over democracy. Now, it's unfortunate that there seems to be backbenchers in both the Liberals and the NDP, and I would suggest often the Bloc Québécois, that seem to not take this as seriously as they should. But it is that running roughshod over democracy that is so troubling, that speaks to the urgency to which we have of the issue before us. And again, an $80,000 original price tag on this app. And I think that there's a lot of discussion that needs to happen, Madam Speaker, about how the Liberals ran roughshod over the fundamental rights of Canadians. This app that they said was so important, when they mandated it, it sent tens of thousands of people into quarantine. It restricted the constitutional ability for Canadians to enter the country, but also by virtue exit the country. And there's a host of things that they seem to never have concern about the implications for the policy decisions that they made. And they'll say, Madam Speaker, I can hear it now, say, oh, well, there's extraordinary circumstances. But Madam Speaker, that doesn't excuse the need to take great care and steward the administration of government and the administration of the freedoms that we have. My colleague from the Shadow Minister of Ethics, Madam Speaker, outlined very clearly the long history over the course of our parliamentary system, the last close to 160 years, not quite there, but getting close. And of course, there's further reference to, and the opening words of the British North America Act, or the Constitution Act 1867, actually even mentions how it would be a government in similar format, and I'm paraphrasing here, but similar format to that of the United Kingdom. So he references in his remarks some of the precedent that goes long before the foundations of our country to ensure that the privileges and ultimately the democratic rights of Canadians are protected. And we see how over the course of the committee testimony, or specifically GC strategies, misleading in name, because a lot of people would look at their website and say, oh, that must be the Government of Canada. And I wouldn't blame them. Government of Canada, GC, right? And in fact, all of us as MPs, our emails have GC in it, right? So it's misleading at best. And then there's a whole bunch of little things like the unnamed public servants that give glowing recommendations about their services that can be provided. They're not willing to provide who gave those. And it turns out that that's not actually part of the procurement process. And the fact that we had revealed in testimony the other day, Madam Speaker, that it was KPMG was told to go talk to GC Strategies in order to get a contract. Like, talk about absurd. The pinnacle of absurdity. Yet this seems to be the culture to which we find ourselves in under this Liberal Prime Minister and the NDP Liberal coalition that continues to vote confidence and back him and that corruption up in this place. So, Madam Speaker, I would, in the last couple of minutes that I have, would simply highlight a couple of...
I have to interrupt the honourable member. The Parliamentary Secretary is rising on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, I rise only because I know there's been a number of members that have made reference to GC being Government of Canada. I don't know in terms of to what degree that has been substantiated. That would be a bit of a concern. I don't want to...
I think the honourable member actually was making it a point about not being the Government of Canada, and I will let him pursue his speech. The honourable member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And whether intentionally or by accident, the member just proved the point. The fact that you have an entity that received $20 million in funding on what was an app that was originally supposed to cost $80,000, and the fact that the company contracted is named GC Strategies, and the confusion, it seems intentional, that they have endeavored to throw at this in what we see an exponential explosion of contracting that these Liberals, and backed by the NDP, every step of the way backed by the NDP. So it's exactly that. That is exactly the point. Manipulating the facts and the truth for their political agenda so that they could get contracts. So maybe when somebody would look through a procurement list, they'd say, oh, well, GC Strategies, oh, that just must be another department under Treasury Board or something like that. Madam Speaker, that speaks to exactly the point I would suggest that we need to be making here. And I would just reference as well, the Auditor General has done some incredible work in outlining some of the egregious accounting, to say the least, Madam Speaker, when it comes to this. And it is only that one more in a laundry list. That, in fact, I would close with this, Madam Speaker. You know, it would be one thing if this was a exceptional circumstance under this Liberal Prime Minister. But it seems like this running roughshod over accountability, running roughshod over our institutions, and ultimately running roughshod over the privileges that are the fundamental backbone of preserving our democracy. They seem so quick to run roughshod over that so many Canadians are simply asking the question and saying, Madam Speaker, that we do not trust that Prime Minister, we do not trust that government, because it's not an exceptional circumstance. It seems that every single day there is a new scandal, there is a new controversy, there is something where this government has mismanaged, led to corruption, and Madam Speaker, one can only jump to the conclusion, and I'll close with this. That rot goes from the bottom all the way to the top, and change needs to happen. Thank you, Madam Speaker.